feeling, right? It's almost a physical sensation. The
Mm.
wrestling with a really complex idea. Maybe you're reading some dense text or an engineer is explaining a new system, and then suddenly the fog just lifts.
The clicking.
Exactly, the click. And all the chaos just sort of organizes itself. It feels stable.
Solid.
Yeah, it's solid.
Yeah.
You think, okay,
Yeah.
I own this now. I get it.
It is arguably one of the most satisfying little hits of dopamine we get. That sensation of clarity just washing over the confusion. It feels like you've arrived.
But, and this is why we're here today, probably to ruin everyone's morning,
Yeah.
what if that feeling is a total liar?
That is the central and, yeah, slightly unsettling premise of today's deep dive. We've been combing through a really fascinating stack of literature on metacognition and, the psychology of learning.
Right.
And the core argument is that we have this massive blind spot when it comes to judging our own competence.
So the headline isn't just that we're overconfident. It's more specific. It's that the actual feeling of understanding often has, zero correlation with real understanding.
Exactly. The research suggests that for most of us, that click, that little rush of clarity, is actually a trap. We carry this unexamined belief that understanding announces itself.
If I get it, I feel good. If I don't, I feel confused.
Which sounds so logical.
Of course. If I'm lost, I usually know I'm lost.
And that assumption is precisely where we get into trouble. Today, we're exploring the cognitive gap between following an explanation and actually understanding it. And honestly, once you see this mechanism, you see it everywhere.
Oh, everywhere. From the classroom to the boardroom.
Yeah.
It explains so much about why I can watch a YouTube tutorial on, I don't know, plumbing, nod along the whole time, feel like a master plumber.
Oh, I know this feeling well.
And then 5 minutes later, I'm standing in front of the sink with absolutely no idea what to do.
The YouTube illusion. A perfect example. We're going to talk about why the brain mistakes familiarity for mastery and how that creates what some researchers call a green light signal.
A green light.
A signal that basically tells you to stop learning right at the moment you probably need to start digging in.
Okay, let's unpack this green light idea.
Yeah.
Because I do this all the time. I'm in a meeting, someone explains a new strategy, I nod, I feel like I get it, and I just move on.
Right. And in everyday life, that's functional. We have to treat that feeling as a signal to stop thinking. Otherwise, we'd be paralyzed, analyzing every single sentence.
No, we prioritize flow over depth.
We have to. The green light is just the brain saying, okay, nothing to see here, keep it moving.
Because the brain is lazy.
Well, what cognitive scientists call a cognitive miser, it wants to conserve energy. Deep analytical thinking is metabolically expensive. It is literal work.
Right. It burns glucose.
It does. So the brain relies on heuristics, shortcuts.
And the shortcut here is a feeling.
The shortcut is fluency. If information flows through your mind easily, if it feels smooth, your brain tags that as true and understood.
So fluency becomes the proxy for truth. If it's easy to process, I assume I've mastered it.
Precisely. And here's the really surprising part from the source material. Misunderstanding rarely feels like misunderstanding. In the moment, it actually feels like understanding.
That's terrifying.
It is. The sources make this incredibly important point that we assume if we were wrong, alarms would be going off in our head. We'd feel lost.
Yeah, you'd feel the friction.
But in reality, the gap between what you think you know and what you actually know, it only reveals itself way later.
During a test.
Or a crisis. And I'm sure you felt this, when you try to explain that simple concept to someone else and you just start stumbling.
Oh, absolutely. It made so much sense when I read it, but now I can't find the words. I just start making vague hand gestures and hope for the best.
That's the gap. The feedback loop is delayed. You feel the confidence now, but the failure happens later. So your brain never connects the two. It doesn't learn that the feeling was a false positive.
So we're just walking around with all these little green lights in our heads thinking we're experts just because we haven't hit the wall yet.
Correct. And we have to ask, why does clarity feel so good? Why are we so addicted to it?
Well, nobody likes feeling stupid.
It goes deeper than ego, though.
Yeah.
It's about mental strain. Uncertainty, the state of not knowing, is psychologically expensive. It demands restraint, patience.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. Being open to being wrong is hard work. So in a complex world, feeling sure is stabilizing. It cuts down on anxiety. It's an emotional anchor.
So we chase that feeling because it's a relief. It's like putting down a heavy bag.
Exactly. And there's a social dimension, too. Think about it. In a meeting, who gets the promotion? The person who speaks with confidence or the person who says, I'm not sure. I need to sit with this uncertainty for a while?
Oh, The decisive one. Every single time. Hesitation is seen as weakness.
So your mind learns feeling sure is socially advantageous. It's reinforced everywhere. So you have this internal drive to get to that green light as fast as possible.
And that brings us to what the source calls the fluency trap. I love that term.
It's a huge part of this illusion. Fluency is just the smoothness of processing information. When an explanation flows logically, A leads to B leads to C, your mind experiences this beautiful continuity.
And because it feels smooth, I assume I've grasped it.
You mistake the quality of the explanation for the quality of your understanding. If I give you a really brilliant, simple, smooth explanation of quantum physics...
I feel like a genius. For a minute.
But you aren't. I did the work. You just watched.
But your brain interprets that lack of friction as comprehension. It's related to the illusion of explanatory depth.
The zipper study.
The zipper study, yeah. Classic. Researchers ask people, do you understand how a zipper works?
A zipper, something you use every day. Every day. And most people said, of course, 5 out of 5, I know how a zipper works.
Familiarity.
Total familiarity. Then the researchers said, great, here's a piece of paper, draw it. Explain specifically how the teeth interlock and release.
I'm panicking just thinking about it. I have no idea. Something about a wedge.
Nobody could do it. Their confidence just collapsed instantly. I realized they didn't know how it worked, they just knew that it worked.
But they walked around feeling totally confident until the moment they were tested.
That's the scary part. This brings us to what I think is the absolute core of this deep dive, the mental model that explains it all.
Right.
The source material calls it borrowed structure versus built structure.
And this is the key takeaway. If you remember nothing else from this, remember this distinction.
This is the unlock.
Okay, break it down for us. What is borrowed structure?
Borrowed structure is coherence that's supplied by your environment. It's the clear teacher, the well-written article, the familiar cues in a presentation.
It allows your mind to operate smoothly without doing the heavy lifting.
That's it.
So it's like using a GPS versus actually knowing the roads.
That is the perfect analogy. When you use a GPS, you get to your destination, you feel like you navigated. But what happens if the phone dies?
I'm completely lost. I was just following instructions. Turn left, turn right.
That is borrowed structure. The satellite, the external source, provided the logic. The connections were made for you. You didn't generate them.
And built structure then is?
Built structure is coherence that you generate internally. It's being able to reconstruct the map in your head without the satellite. It's generating the explanation from scratch.
And the problem, I'm guessing, is that borrowed structure feels exactly like built structure.
In the moment, yes. They both produce that same feeling of flow and clarity. It functions like understanding temporarily. It gets you through the meeting, it gets you through the chapter, but it vanishes the second that external support is removed.
Which reminds me of that distinction the notes made between recognition and recall.
Yes, this is the cognitive mechanic behind the illusion. Recognition is relying on external cues. Someone says something, you nod and go, yes, that makes sense.
All right, I know that term.
But recall, or generation, is the ability to produce the idea under constraint. Can you pull up that information without the cue? Can you make the argument without the book open?
It's the scaffolding analogy again.
Exactly. You see a building covered in scaffolding, it looks solid, you can climb it, but if the actual building underneath isn't finished, the moment you take that scaffolding down,
the whole thing just collapses.
And that's us. We mistake the scaffolding, the good explanation, the helpful diagram for the building itself. We think the structure is in our heads when it's actually still in the environment.
So what is the brain actually doing then, during this borrowed structure phase? If it's not building knowledge, what is it doing?
Mostly, it's pattern matching and predicting.
Yeah.
The brain is an efficiency machine, remember. It's incredibly sensitive to coherence. If information aligns with what it expects, the brain signals low friction.
It takes the path of least resistance.
Think about it as predictive processing. As you're listening to me right now, your brain is subconsciously predicting what I'm going to say next.
You're trying to finish my sentences.
Exactly. And if I say what you expect, if the logic follows a familiar path, you feel confirmation. The source notes that this feeling of confirmation feels like mastery, but it's not. You're just successfully predicting the immediate context.
So you're not learning the concept. You're just sort of dancing to the rhythm of the explanation.
There's this one quote from the source that I found really profound. When understanding seems to form, the brain is often just settling into a state of minimal resistance. It feels like an arrival, but it is actually just rest.
Rest, not arrival. Wow. Okay, I need to sit with that for a second. We think we reached the destination, but really we've just stopped walking because the road got smooth.
And that mistake has real consequences. This isn't just about, feeling foolish. This impacts learners, students, decision makers.
Let's talk about the learner's crisis, because I see this all the time with students, or really anyone learning a new skill.
Well, students study with their notes open, right? They reread the textbook, highlighting lines. They look at a sentence and say, yep, I know that. Yep, got that. Everything makes sense.
Because they have all the borrowed structure. Then they get to the exam. No notes, no book, scaffolding's gone.
And they fail. But here's the tragedy. How do they interpret that failure?
I'm stupid. Or I'm just bad at this subject.
Exactly. They interpret a structural problem relying on borrowed structure as a personal failure of intelligence. They think, my brain must be broken. But no, you never practiced without the scaffolding. You practiced recognition, not recall.
That's a huge shift in perspective. It's not about talent. It's about the method you use to check your understanding.
And for decision makers, leaders, the risk is even higher. You can make a huge decision based on a shallow understanding that feels deep.
Because the presentation was slick. The slide deck was beautiful.
Because the narrative was clean. You know the story, but you don't know the mechanics. So when conditions change, when a crisis hits, the decision fails. And not because it was reckless, but because the understanding behind it was thinner than it felt.
You can't pivot because you don't actually own the logic.
Right. And it even touches on identity formation, which I found fascinating. We label ourselves. We call ourselves intuitive or analytical or a quick learner based on how often we feel that flash of clarity.
But if that clarity is just an illusion, we're building our identities on a cognitive trick.
And we swing between feeling like geniuses and feeling like frauds.
The cycle of certainty and shock. You feel confident, then you're shocked when you fail. That might be where a lot of imposter syndrome comes from.
How so?
Well, maybe that feeling of being a fraud is your subconscious realizing you're relying on borrowed structure. You feel like you're faking it because, on a structural level, you are. You haven't built the building yet.
So we've diagnosed the problem. We're addicted to the green light, we rely on borrowed structure, and our lazy brains love low friction. How do we fix it? How do we actually understand things?
The first step is decoupling. You have to decouple the feeling of understanding from the fact of understanding. You have to accept that feeling sure tells you nothing.
You have to stop trusting the click.
Or at least audit the click. The source calls this the test of constraint.
Right. And what is that?
It's where you prove understanding by removing the prompt. You have to take away the scaffolding yourself. Can you generate the explanation independently?
So if I'm reading a book, I literally need to close the book and try to explain the chapter out loud to an empty room.
Yes, or write it down on a blank sheet of paper. And here is the crucial part. It will feel terrible.
Chuckles. That's not a great selling point for your method.
I know, but it's the truth. When you remove the borrowed structure, you will stumble. You'll struggle. You will feel that friction come roaring back. You will feel stupid.
And that's the moment we usually panic. We think, oh no, I don't get it. And we rush to open the book again just to make the bad feeling go away.
We have to reframe that confusion. The source says that discomfort is not failure. It's exposure.
Exposure.
It's just revealing what hasn't been built yet. It's showing you where the holes are so you can start to fill them.
That's actually really liberating. Confusion isn't a stop sign. It's the construction zone.
Exactly. That struggle. That is the feeling of your brain actually building the structure. Durable understanding is slower. It often feels unstable while it's developing. It doesn't have that same flash of certainty.
So real learning might actually feel a bit like doubt.
Real learning feels like work. It feels like hacking a path through the woods instead of driving on a paved highway. But once you build that path, it's yours. You don't need the GPS anymore.
That is a massive shift in how we approach everything, from reading the news to learning a new skill at work.
It all comes back to critical thinking. If you want to be a rigorous thinker, you have to be suspicious of your own sense of clarity. When something feels too easy, that's your cue to worry.
Okay, this makes too much sense. What am I missing?
Precisely. Am I just predicting this, or do I understand it? Is this built, or is it borrowed?
Am I nodding because I know this, or because the speaker is just really charismatic?
All right, let's bring this all together. We started with the idea that the click of understanding is a liar.
And we learned that we rely on borrowed structure coherence from the world around us, and we mistake it for our own knowledge.
We've learned that our brains are just energy-saving machines that love easy patterns and hate uncertainty.
And that this leads to the green light illusion, where we stop thinking at the exact moment we should be starting.
And the solution is to embrace the difficulty, to test ourselves constantly by removing the scaffolding, to realize fluency is not mastery.
If you take one thing away, it should be this. Confidence is a terrible indicator of what you've actually built in your mind. Especially in the early stages of learning, feeling confused is often a sign that you're finally doing it right.
It's a hard truth, but a necessary one.
It is, because once you know the scaffolding is there, you can choose to take it down. You can choose to build something that will actually stand on its own.
And that brings us to our final thought for this deep dive.
We always like to leave you with a little something to chew on.
So, if the feeling of certainty is designed to hide your gaps rather than reveal the truth, what does that mean for the opinions you feel most strongly about right now?
Ooh, that is the dangerous question.
Think about that one topic you feel you know best. Political stance,
Yeah.
your philosophy on parenting, your economic theory. The one where you have zero doubt.
Is it possible that your certainty is just really, really good scaffolding?
Go find out. Remove it. Try to explain your position from scratch without the talking points, without the articles, without the borrowed phrases. Just see what's actually left standing.
You might be surprised by what you find. Or, more likely, by the silence you encounter.
And that silence. That's where the real thinking begins.
Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.